Having spent 18 months in the COVID pandemic and particularly working clinically, we really needed a holiday, so we finally got away to Gran Canaria. But first things first, take the dog out. Well, drop him off anyway for his little holiday too, and then catch the flight from Luton. To all nervous flyers out there, I used to be terrified of flying, really scared. It never stopped me going places. I went to plenty of places around the world. However, it's when I took a few flying lessons and I learned how it works, and then followed certain people like Petter on Mentor. He's a YouTuber, and I don't just no longer fear it. I actually love flying now. It's great fun. And then finally get to our Airbnb in Puerto Rico in Gran Canaria. And Sharon's got a bad headache, and then we're straight to the beach. That first flurry of energy that first day, you're so thinking, oh, I'm going to spend all week just travelling, doing things, exploring, going sailing, going out to sea, picking up a motorbike, going up into the mountains. Best laid plans and all that. Ultimately, we fell asleep for about 3 days before actually managing to get out and do things. That's the posh place, then that roundabout looks like there's such a contrast in Puerto Rico. We usually go to Puerto Morgan because it's just a beautiful place right by the sea and we can pick up a boat. But I thought, well, actually, let's try Puerto Rico. It's got a real kind of vibe, a real life to it. Not really our kind of thing because we like travelling, we like going exploring places rather than just all the bars. However, there are some pretty. It is trendy insofar as if you want a cool out Saturday night, then you can have it. And sometimes, well, that's what we thought we wanted, especially after 18 months of COVID. And so, cheap bars, why not? For one day. Then it was straight back out into the mountains. Again, the obligatory swim in the sea. And similarly, I mean, it's something we do because we live on the Isle of Wight, so we're used to going down to the sea every evening. And so really, as a special thing, it wasn't really that special, other than the fact that I think it was December. So that was lovely. However, we soon just wanted to go and explore the island again. Well, after we'd explored one of the bars, why not? A few mojitos, I think, and then maybe just go straight back to the Airbnb and relax. The best Sharon's a real foodie. She's an absolutely fantastic cook. You might wonder why we're actually cooking whilst we're on holiday. Well, we did have a couple of evenings out, or we tried to. I think we did it once and then once in the morning. But ultimately, for a start, it was quite expensive. Secondly, in Sharon's opinion, the food wasn't that great, and her food is far better. But finally, she actually loves to cook, so this is like a hobby to her. In fact, she films it and she makes her own videos on it. And also, because of having a ground floor apartment, it meant that we also had a garden that we could sit out in the sun. At the time of editing this video, I don't think I've edited any of her videos from her cooking whilst in Gran Canaria. But I will do, and I'll upload them after I've completed this one.
Yeah, a bit garlic.
You can't underestimate the power of a decent holiday, especially a sunny holiday in the middle of winter. Gran Canaria has been our go-to place for winters for years, and we hadn't gone the previous year because of COVID and lockdown. It's so amazingly relaxing, great for one's mental health. Although we did wonder how the boy was, and so we got a couple of photos back. It felt strange actually with Sharon cooking in the kitchen because we're so used to having the boy there, the dog, who sits there patiently waiting for any drips or any drops of fat or extra kind of bits of meat that she cuts off and gives him. So apart from lamenting the missing of the boy, it was a thoroughly wonderful evening each evening, coming home, having a glass of wine and a wonderful meal. It is true that it's mostly sunny in Gran Canaria all through the year and all through winter. Certainly that's my experience. I've not actually checked the data on that, but that's been my experience. Occasionally you get a bit cloudy like now, because that's usually because of the mountains, but it moves on. And here we are in the sunshine again, all beautiful afternoons, just soaking up the vitamin D as necessary through a very dark winter back in Blighty. I usually hire a motorbike on the island. Actually, it's from Puerto Rico I usually hire it. It's a BMW 650, which is my regular go-to bike when I'm abroad. However, there were none available. I tried getting one from Las Palomas, I think it was, further south. Again, it was really, really difficult. Eventually, they were only the big bikes, the 1200s, and they were like ridiculous amounts of money to hire. And then I saw one car for hire just on the corner of where our apartment was, and it was a VW convertible, and it was cheaper. It was half the price of a motorbike. So I thought, well, I don't really see Sharon playing pillion anymore. She just doesn't like it. Her knees have gone from too many years of skiing, so she doesn't actually like being on the back of a motorbike. So I thought, well, why not hire that? And it was so much fun. It was basically a kind of motorbike in some respects, insofar as being out and about and actually being open to the air. Fantastic experience. And so we explored the rest of the north of the island and the west of the island, all through the mountains, as you will now see.
Not bad.
Anybody who loves the mountains will love Gran Canaria. They look very distinct compared to, say, Switzerland or the Austrian Alps, amongst other places. There's less greenery because of the arid nature and the lack of water. It is volcanic island, same with Madeira. So they've been thrust out of the sea. Now each of the islands look very, very different though. So apart from Tierra Mountain on Tenerife, there aren't really as tall mountains in the same way. Now Fuerteventura is really low. It's really low in comparison. It looks nothing like this. Whereas La Gomera looks like this but with trees, because it's so much greener, because it's a lower elevation and catches more rain coming off the Atlantic. Did I mention it's also great fun? Fantastic driving or riding through these mountains. It is absolutely awesome. The only thing is that you have to have a bit of a head for heights, and you saw the previous video and how tricky it can be with some of the cars in the passing places. That can be quite challenging. It does require a bit of skill, bit of practice beforehand down in the valleys, and particularly to getting used to always being on the right hand side, because you don't want to go around a corner or a tight bend and then suddenly realise you're on the wrong side of the road because you're used to being in whichever country, say Britain or Australia for example. And the heights are pretty steep. I mean, you don't want to have an accident here. I mean, you really don't want to go over that edge. But most places do have decent corrugated steel, unlike, say, Madeira, which a lot of places Madeira don't have. But Gran Canaria, it certainly feels a lot more safer. But again, I always check my brakes. Keep the brakes cool as well, so don't overheat them. Use a lot of engine braking, so second gear particularly, especially going down the hills rather. But otherwise, it's just fantastic fun. Just enjoy yourself. It's a playground, and that's where I see Gran Canaria. It's just an awesome playground. The only thing it doesn't have is skiing, but then you have Switzerland for that. It's even closer. And of course, being European, all the cars are pretty much manual, so whatever you do, always leave in first gear, the equivalent of park for automatic cars, and put that handbrake on an extra notch, always worthwhile. And the other trick as well, just one of the skills, and it's in our highway code, is to point the wheels away from the edge. It may seem really common sense, but you'd be surprised that you may not think of it, especially if you're distracted with the views. And you may also be distracted such that you don't realise just how steep some of these are. So make sure you give plenty of room, pull in, find an actual parking place rather than an actual just a passing place. Now I'm going to show this in its entirety because these are the kind of hairpin bends. For those not experienced in hairpin bends, the way I learnt it was by a brilliant motorcyclist, part of my club when we went round Switzerland, is that you pull out wide. Now it takes quite a bit of skill to do this, and I learnt this on the motorcycle because it's slightly counterintuitive, but you look further down the road, so you're not looking directly in front of the vehicle, you're looking much further round to see if there's any vehicles coming up before you manoeuvre, and then you swing round and pull wide. And yes, there are some absolutely stunning vistas and stunning places you can park up and take some amazing pictures, some really philosophical kind of looking, moody kind of pictures. Hi there, Sharon. Is that you? So here we are parked up at the top end of, this is just east of Mogan. Now there's Mogan and there's Puerto Mogan, so we're just coming down the valley towards Mogan and then into Puerto Mogan before we head south towards Puerto Rico. Now this is still part of the stunning hairpin bends, so I'm going to discuss further as we go through here. Now we don't get the winters that you get in Switzerland, so it's actually, you know that you're going to grip really, really well. And it's rarely that wet. Compare that to Madeira, which is a bit more, a bit wetter, and those roads can be a bit more slippy. Again, what I do is I prepare as I come up to the bend. So as I'm coming up to the hairpin, I start getting obviously right in my gears. So I'm down from 3, I might go down to 2, might even go to 1, depends at what point. I'd already looked over my shoulder to the left. Yeah, so I'd already seen that there were no other vehicles coming up, or if there is one, I'm prepared and ready so I can pull into a passing place. and then pull around. So the actual camera's view is not the driver's view, it's not what I'm looking at. So that's more about just obviously looking at the view. But it is a technical skill, and you build up that skill over time. I'm not saying I'm fantastic, I'm not an advanced motorist, sorry. However, I've learned quite a few skills over the years as I drive and ride, particularly in quite challenging environments. Some of this I find really exciting. My adrenaline's definitely going at this point, and a few butterflies, I must confess. Now, another thing to look out for here is that when people are driving up, especially if they're a little bit anxious because they're so close to the edge there, and there's no corrugated steel to protect them, is they may feel they may be leaning in too much to the left, i.e. in your path. So be really conscious of that, of any nervous drivers, especially less experienced drivers, because we're only now about 10 kilometres, I think, from Puerto Morgan, where people can pick up a car. I think most high cars are from Puerto Rico. However, it's really not far. They come straight off the equivalent of a motorway, and then very quickly they're up into these quite delicate mountain terrain. Sweeping eye movements to do on a motorbike. First gear, use engine braking. Two halves, nice and smooth. Use the gear, don't use the clutch. And we're okay. Now a bit of background. Every winter my wife and I used to go skiing. We used to go to Switzerland particularly. Lauterbrunnen was our favourite place, but also we went to a few other places like Tignes in France. And it's fantastic. You still get plenty of sunshine, I think, in a lot of places in the Alps for skiing. Yeah. And pretty much that's where we do want some vitamin D in the winter, especially long British winters. And we love the rigour of being out in the mountains in skiing. And then just one year we just thought, you know what, let's try ostensibly a lazy holiday and go to Gran Canaria, and we'll just sit on a beach all week. Well, you can see from my other previous video that where I first tried that, it just didn't work. It's just not us. We like being busy. But we did fall in love with the island. And so we came back each year now, sometimes twice a winter. And with the cheap flights, or they were, I'm sure that's changed now, but they were really cheap flights from Luton up Stansted. So with EasyJet, amongst others, I mean, there's quite a few carriers now, or they were. Like I say, the world is changing, unfortunately. However, we've had amazing times, and we're going to come to some other hobbies that you can do here. Some of the other videos you'll see where we've been sailing, or we go mountain climbing, or we just go hiking and exploring. You think it's got to peter out at some point, but it just doesn't. Try not to press the clutch. Your temptation is to press the clutch on the bend, because you're thinking anything's coming at you, you want to stop, but don't. I hover my left foot over the clutch. And it just seems to keep going on.
No end.
Last Christmas is on. And there are actual Christmas carols, or Christmas songs rather, being sung out on the beach. Yeah, it could get a little loud, especially later on at night. More scran and more amazing food courtesy of Sharon Smithson. And well, and a nice glass of wine too. We hadn't been climbing before in Gran Canaria, despite the temptation of the mountains. They just draw you near. So we booked with the company, and this is an excellent company with this gentleman here, highly professional, really safe, really robust. The day we went, however, it was really windy.
Let's go climbing, he said. It'll be fun, he said.
Okay, here the most dangerous part is falling on this side, okay? No,
This is actually a basic start really. It was just to get the ball rolling, to see how we're at, to see what skill levels I think, because there was a party of about 6 I think there were, maybe 5 of us. So it's about just getting used to the rocks, getting used to the mountain, getting used to the weather, prevailing conditions, and also for him I think to get a measure of us about what we're like. Now what Sharon is like is Sharon is bold. Sharon is very bold. She breaks through any fear factor to the point where she'll just go and do anything, whereas I'm more tempered. So as you can see, I didn't go first. I let her go first, not so much to test the safety of the equipment, just genuinely as in like I just like to measure things up, weigh things up, and then I'll tackle the risk. And we'll see later how that panned out, because ultimately on the very final climb I didn't proceed, and unfortunately Sharon was injured. No, I think that's for coming down. Wait till it gets tight, Chas. For this next climb, we're heading up into a cave. It's where the Canarians used to live. In fact, it was their last holdout before the Spanish conquistadors came and destroyed their way of life, in effect. But it's really tricky. It's a great place. You can see, imagine the defensive aspect to it, just throwing stones down on the Spanish conquistadors. Anyway, Sharon's going first. She's going up the up into the cave, and then as to add to our fears, or to give a good test of challenge, we also went caving now. Now onto some caving. Now I've never been caving before, so I was really curious first of all about what it's about, you know, what we get up to, but also just how I'd respond, because it's kind of, well, one expects that it's an instinctive fear, isn't it? Claustrophobia. And I confess, I did think occasionally, what if there were an earthquake, especially goes through very small gaps. But actually, I really liked it. It was really enjoyable, and I didn't really feel the fear. And it was an odd thing. I did feel a fear from heights, whereas some of the people I was climbing with didn't feel fear of heights, but they were afraid of this, and I wasn't. So I think these kind of instinctive fears are just that. They're instinctive, but they're stronger in some than others. I think it's just the natural state of us being human.
Yeah, that'd be a bed sit in London, that.
It's intriguing just how boldness must be a genetic thing, because my wife's really bold, and so is this gentleman's wife too.
It's a very cool picture.
In a way, it kind of felt like a natural, I was going to say hotel then, I suppose it was a hotel for thousands of years ago. I found that really profound.
Sink going down.
I'm going to climb under it now. Let's get out.
Right, Martin's going first. Just watching my foot coming down here.
Oh, that was exciting. Another first, neither of us had ever been abseiling before, and I knew when I'd got up the cave that we would have to abseil down. And again, I just didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how I would be, because you have the 3 Fs, the fight, flight and freeze, the potential kind of responses from your endocrine system. So you don't really know. So but I did guess, or kind of inferred, that the first step is obviously going to be the worst. So if you can get over that first step, there's no real chance of really getting back up. And besides, how are you going to get down? You've got to get down. So really the most difficult one is that very first step. And so that was my main focus when it was my turn. Just focus on that first step, just get that right, and get the movement, the actual movement of the rope through the actual gear. Now you can see my wife here, she has a slightly tricky thing. I think her balance is just slightly off, but again, it's because she's never done it before. I'd never done it before, you know. It just takes a little bit of practice through the carabiner. By the way, the instructor here is a guy called Pablo. I'll put a link to the description of his website on TripAdvisor. It was actually TripAdvisor that really kind of encouraged me to do this, because I didn't really feel confident enough to do some of these activities. But when I read the TripAdvisor comments, the feedback was exceptional, and that is absolutely reflected in his professionalism. He really does imbue a sense of confidence. He is exceptional at what he does. There was no ego. It wasn't about him. It was about us. He really is an absolute professional. And we'll see this later on, especially when my wife has a slight ankle injury. Again, this is the first time we've ever done this, so it looks a little bit sloppy for us. But like I say, the way he guides us down is absolutely excellent.
La última baja me parece. Porque después está la gozadera. We open carabiner and leave it inside. So this is your rope.
Yep, I control the rope here.
Go there.
Stand here.
Yeah.
So I just let this go free flow, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, legs apart, yeah.
That's it. Okay?
Yep.
You have to like sit down. Okay, look here with no panic face, please. Yeah. Let's do it.
Now we're really hikers, maybe ramblers, maybe a little bit more, a little bit kind of really easy stages of climbing without ropes, from the Cairngorms, Aviemore, through Glencoe, the Coolins, all the way down to Switzerland and the Alps, in summer that is. We've experienced in winter in Scotland and summer in the Alps, but we generally don't use rope, and so like I say we're more amateurs. We're just kind of just enjoying ourselves. Albeit that when it comes to orienteering, particularly in the gear, I've always taken safety absolutely 100%. I've only ever had one accident in 2007 when I fell off a cornice in the Cairngorms, but I learnt a lot of stuff since then. Cheers. Feed that through here. Thanks.
Okay.
Doesn't like a bit of adrenaline. Just don't look. Don't look down. We had a great time with the other tourists. Well, I say tourists, kind of adventurers. And something else I've noticed over the years, especially meeting different people doing different sports and hobbies and things, is that there must be something in character, or I don't know if it's even genetic, but this couple we were with, they'd just previously just cycled from John O'Groats to Land's End the previous week, I think, and the following week they were cycling around Tenerife. Now they just completed 4 days, I think, previously, or 3 days, with Pablo, doing mostly mountain climbing, but also various water activities, like water rafting. And this was the culmination because this is four kind of activities in one day, and it ends on a zip line. So it's a fantastic time. We just went straight in at day 4 because frankly we were busy the previous 3 days, but it was a standalone day anyway, and we just had a fantastic time. Great people, great adventure, and a great towards the end of the holiday. Oof. After you. I was pretty much, I think, at the edge of what I'm used to, right up to the edge, as it were. It probably reminds me a little bit more of like Striding Edge in the Lake District, or maybe Anakigak in Glencoe. Very similar, very craggy, with quite a drop off on either side, but not really requiring rope, as long as you're as sure-footed as a mountain goat. Again, I had butterflies. It was a little bit exciting, but it was perfectly safe. It was dry for a start, but it was quite windy. That was the only thing that kind of perturbed me a little bit, especially when it's now the wind is in our face, I think, so it felt a little bit exposed. This is the final climb, and it's one I actually ducked out of. We can see the kind of the trail there towards the face of the rock. There's no rope here. There's no ability to rope up here, but there are hooks on the rock itself, on the rock face. This bit was I just didn't feel comfortable. It was too exposed with the wind, and that was just a personal choice. And the others did continue. So the route was up over the rock face, right towards the top like a dome, similar to what you have at Yosemite Park, and then a zip wire down on the other side. I missed the zip wire. I would have really liked that, but I just felt too uncomfortable. No, I decided the zip wire was not for me. I've pushed my boundaries today, my scary boundaries. Being bold and brave, Sharon did. She tried to get to the top. She managed to get to the top, and then I think the wind blew her off balance, and she ended up spraining. We didn't know whether it was fracture at the time or sprain her ankle, so she had to be brought back down from the rock face with the guys, 2 of the guys, Pablo and one of the other guys. And then there was a question mark about how to get off the mountain. But she is just such a stalwart. I mean, we've had some injuries over the years, a couple of skiing injuries. I remember one time when she shattered a leg, and she waited to get to A&E. She waited quite some considerable time. I think she had an assignment to hand in, and so she wanted to finish her assignment, which she did, and then handed that in to make sure it was on time. and then she went to A&E, and that's when they discovered just how badly damaged her leg was. So when I saw just how much pain she was in, I thought this could be really quite bad. And I was thinking potentially mountain rescue at this point. But she hobbled down, and we got to the car park. We met the folks who came down the zip wire later. One of them was a medic, actually, by pure good fortune. Pablo's insurance was fantastic. They came through immediately. We got number 2 give over to A&E down in Mas Palomas, I think it was. Just to add as well is that Pablo's insurance came through, and that paid for all the treatment and the scans, etc. What I would say is there was a lot of people, certainly a lot of British people in the A&E department. All of them had to put up €500 before they'd even be seen. So a word of warning, A111 card no longer is accepted, which is deeply unfortunate, and as a consequence of Brexit, frankly, to be all controversial and political. But there it is a financial cost if you do have an injury. That said, obviously take out your own insurance, and if you're taking high-risk sports, high-risk pursuits, definitely tick the box that says it's a high-risk pursuit like skiing or climbing. Honestly, no matter how much it costs, it will save you a small fortune, God forbid, if you are actually injured whilst pursuing that hobby. One final thing regarding departure. Now, it depends when you may be watching this, but certainly check the COVID rules. The COVID rules changed whilst we were out there. Now, obviously, we were on that. We obviously kept up to date with the .gov website, certainly for the UK, but also the Spanish territories. We still underestimated it, so we took our LFD test. And we thought that was sufficient, amongst other things. We also had to register with different websites, etc. Very bureaucratic, very typically bureaucratic, for two governments kind of coming up with their own policy very quickly and quite quickly changing. However, we were caught out, so we had to get another test at the airport. We had to register with with the website of the company, and then go to the actual place. Have a test done, then wait 20 minutes. We literally had to be sped across the airport to catch the plane. It was just leaving, in effect. The airport were brilliant, absolutely excellent little person with a wheelchair who literally ran through the actual airport to make sure that Sharon had the flight on time. It was highly stressful, but absolutely excellent service.
Archie boy!
It feels kind of awesome to be welcomed home by the boy. And to see how much he's obviously missed us all, but it's great to catch up. He's just absolutely loving it. And then seconds later, he doesn't want to go home because they spoiled him. Absolutely spoiled him.